Hey guys, I just found a really interesting video here from The Verge. Everyone's been talking about it, but I haven't seen it yet, so I'm gonna give my 2 cents on it. So let's see what's going on.
So a few years ago, TC, or managing editor, built a gaming desktop, but it's kind of out of date and it's definitely not going to hold up for Battlefield 5. So let's build a new one. But I want to go, well, of course, first you need a table. Preferably not metal. If it
For building on the PC, you don't need a table, you don't need a chair, you don't need a carpet. You can build this, basically, you can build your computer anywhere that you have like a space to build it. You can build it outside. Other people don't understand is a lot of people are scared when they're building their computers. They think, oh, I have to buy a static strap, I have to do this, I have to that. You can build your computer on the carpet. You can build your computer on a piece of plastic, on a wood table, metal table. It don't matter. You can build a computer on it. What you should know is that if you're gonna build a computer, make sure that you have discharged the static electricity on your body by just touching a piece of metal, you know, grounded, you know, case, whatever, just to discharge the static buildup on your body, and that will help out all that.
It's going to be metal, have an anti-static working surface layered on top of it, a thermal paste applicator, an Allen wrench, some tweezers to tighten up the wire.
So you don't need a thermal paste applicator, you don't need an Allen key, and definitely these are zip ties. They're not tweezers. So I don't know what this genius is talking about. So maybe somebody told him that zip ties are tweezers, or I'm not sure like who tricked him when he was younger, but he's an older guy now, so he should know better, but maybe not. All right, let's continue here.
There's a Swiss Army knife, which hopefully has a Phillips.
Hold on. This clown has a Swiss Army knife. He has a Swiss Army knife. Who builds a computer with a Swiss Army knife? What are you building your computer out in a campsite? And that's all you have? Like, really, dude?
A screwdriver in it. And last but not least, an anti-static bracelet.
This guy picks up a rubber strap. It looks like one of those the whatever, I believe in a cause straps you put on your hand. Whatever your cause is, I believe in helping the sick or something. This guy picks one of these up for anti-static. Like, really? That's not gonna help you with any anti-static. So another trick that how somehow you've been brainwashed to believe, a rubber band like that is not going to help you do anything. It's just going to tells people you support a cause. That's all that's going to do. All right, okay, let me get back to this here,
which is to protect you and the parts. These are the parts you're going to need, but more importantly, before we get there, we need to understand what these parts are doing and how they interact with one another. To better understand the parts that...
All right, let's skip this telling people what parts do. I don't know if you should be someone telling people that stuff, but I'll skip over this. Let's get to your genius build. All right.
Isolate the parts that you really need, place items into the case, and make sure that they all fit, and then...
When I first just saw that a second ago, he had his power supply in backwards, but... let's carry on.
And start working. And now we're really going to start building by adding the motherboard in. Some notes about installing motherboards: they're really delicate, you should be really careful with...
No, they're not really delicate, weirdo. Motherboards are made out of composite materials, and they're pretty strong. You have to be really trying to break your motherboard to actually break it. So no, it's not a flimsy, you can just snap it. It's a pretty sturdy piece of electronics.
And screw in with confidence, but also don't screw in too hard, otherwise you could crack the board.
Like, how are you screwing in hard enough to crack a motherboard? What do you have? Crazy like elephant strength? How are you screwing this thing in here to freaking snap the motherboard? Like, when you screw something in, it stops. Especially on these standoffs on this PC, it stops before you can even when you hit a turn and finally the screw stops, you don't go any further. Why would you keep tightening if the screw stops spinning? Like, why? Just to be an a-hole? Like, wow.
I chose Asus's Z370 motherboard for two main reasons. One, it has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and also it has support for NVMe SSDs, meaning you can get really fast SSDs that are really easy to install. Pay close attention to the brace that goes...
I hate to inform you, sir, but that is not a brace. That is an I/O shield. I don't think you know what a brace is. If you're describing an I/O shield as a brace, you have no idea what a brace is. Oh my goodness.
At the back of the computer, you always have to make sure that you really hammer it in, because there's no screw. It really just has to go outside of the case and clasp onto the frame. And this is very important because otherwise you can't align the motherboard correctly.
Really, usually on the newer PC cases, not all of them, but on a lot of newer cases, I've noticed that they have an alignment pin that comes out of the case that locks your motherboard into place. So as long as you're in that alignment pin that pops up out of the case there, it'll have the motherboard aligned perfectly where you screw all the your bolts in. So I don't know what he's talking about.
With the holes. We're just going to start installing all 8 screws.
This clown is actually using the Swiss Army knife here. I thought he was joking when he pushed that out on the table, but he's actually using a Swiss Army knife to build the PC. Go gadget tool belt with this one.
So next we're going to install the RAM on the motherboard.
I have no idea why this guy did not install his RAM and his CPU on his motherboard before he installed it in the case. I don't understand why he didn't do it. That's baffling me right now. Like, why would you wait and install your CPU and a RAM after you put it in the case? There's just gonna be no room to work. Like, you're cutting off your room to work here. Like, why would you do that? You're only hurting yourself. So, you know, like, I don't get it. All right, let's keep going.
I chose Corsair's 16GB Vengeance LED RAM for two main reasons. One, it has LEDs and we do like lights in our gaming desktops. Secondly, it's pretty fast RAM. It's 2666 megahertz.
2666 megahertz is not fast RAM, and if you couldn't afford another RAM, you should have not got the RGB RAM in the first place and got a faster RAM like 3000, 32, 36. Like, why would you get a 2666 and then just because you wanted RGB when you could have got a faster RAM with no RGB for a cheaper price? Like, really? Or you could have got all 4 RAMs. Like, you could have got filled up all 4 slots. What a genius.
I believe so. It's pretty fast, and this motherboard supports that speed, which is most important. Open the slots first, and
why are you opening all the slots on your RAM? You only have 2. Why are you opening all of them? You only have 2, and there's supposed to be only 2 you open. If you check your manual for your motherboard, there's only 2 that you use to have your dual RAM running.
Just aligning the stick with the middle of the strip, not with the end, and just lining that up with the logo. So once you hear that solid clasp and you don't see the gold connectors on the side anymore.
When you're installing RAM, you have to be careful. When you put it on, you hit it, put pressure on both sides. Don't do one side at a time, because that could damage your pins. that could rip a pin out. It's not, you know, something that always happens, but it is a possibility. So you don't want to do that. You want to push pressure on both ends when you press it down into place.
That's when you know the RAM is in. Step 3, we're going to install the hard.
Oh, I can see right here, this clown has both RAMs right next to each other. You don't want to do that if you want to run your dual RAMs in RAM mode here. You can't have them right next to each other like this. Like, what is he doing? I guess he's running single channel instead of dual channel RAM. I guess that's what he likes. Weirdo.
Drive, or in this case, the NVMe SSD. I chose this format of solid state drive so that I could input it into the motherboard without having to worry about extra wires or putting it in a separate part of the case and just getting really messy. This is from Kingston, and it's 480 gigabytes.
If you don't want any wires from SATA cables or anything in your new gaming PC you're building, I would suggest you get something over 480 gigabytes. That's not gonna cut it. If you don't want any wires in your system, you just want the NVMe to make it look all pretty, you better get 2 terabytes, because that's not gonna cut it. That 480 is not gonna cut it. You better get some some hard drive space. Okay,
so it's not a lot, but you can always upgrade this and swap it out, and it's only.
I can see already that this guy is not even installing this NVMe right, because there's screws that come with your motherboard usually that you use to install on the motherboard. One is like a standoff, and then the other end is the screw, and you put the standoff underneath it that keeps it up instead of letting it press down, because if you press it down it'll go like in an incline and it might snap. So there's 2 parts to it, a little screw and a little standoff that you install, whichever size NVMe you're using on your motherboard.
Only held down by 1 screw and the latch, so it's.
I can see right here, he didn't even install it. He didn't even install the standoff screw that goes under the bottom here. It's gonna have to bend. Let me keep going here.
Really simple and really straightforward. Speed for gaming is important when it comes to a hard drive. You want files to write quickly.
You can see it bending right here. This genius doesn't have the standoff underneath here to support the NVMe. He's bending it down to screw it in. You could really damage this NVMe here, or the slot that it goes into. Whichever one it is. Could be, I think it's an M type. But what is wrong with this guy? He's damaging. You paid $2,000 and you're damaging all the components you bought. That is insane. That is insane.
And you want games to load quickly, so that's why it's best if you use an SSD. Okay, so step 4, we're going to install the graphics card. I chose PNY's GTX.
Dude bought a PNY graphics card and he's building a $2,000 computer. Like, are you serious? Who builds a $2,000 PC? I guess a PNY, like, what is this? That's what you do when you're building a budget PC. Like, really?
1080, which is overclocked. And so it's a pretty easy installation. You're just going to find.
It doesn't even have a backplate on it. It's like a budget $2,000. What a weirdo.
And the gold connectors. And you're going to line this bracket with the back end bracket of your PC case. Now, which lane you choose depends entirely on what other parts you're going to put in the system.
Mr. Rocket Scientist, there's a certain lane that you have to put your graphics card in. The X16 lane, PCIe X16. If you're putting it in other lanes, it's not going to get the bandwidth it needs to run. Like, why would you waste bandwidth and put it in a slower lane? Like, because usually there's dual. It depends on what size motherboard you get, but if you get an ATX, they're usually like dual not X16, but these PCIe lanes, and one's an X16 and one is usually an X8. So if you put it in the X8, you're not going to get your whole bandwidth that you would if you put it in the X16. So that would be like a waste of money, basically. Guys, I gotta calm down because I'm starting to mess up a lot when I'm talking here, because I'm so pissed off right now with this genius. So I'm trying to calm down so I can explain everything right.
I'm just going to pick the top one because the SSD is at the bottom, and
he picked the top one because his SSD is at the bottom, so he likes that one. He likes that one because that's why he picked that one. Not because it's the X16 lane. You just like it because the SSD was there.
I want to cover it. I just think it looks nice. Click down. Take your remaining brackets and just screw these in. Use installed. Shows Corsair's 850 watt come out, and I don't in it with these little insulating pads.
First of all, that is not insulating pads, Mr. Genius. That's vibration strips, because the power supply has a fan in it, and all the electronic components, it brings out a vibration, and the vibration will travel through your case. So that's why they put those vibration strips on the bottom to keep the vibration from running through the case and make noise in your brand new case there, Mr. Albert Einstein. So that's what that is. Vibration strips.
So the power supply doesn't short circuit and come into contact with the rest of the system.
This clown thinks the power supply is short circuited. He thinks the power supply almost will short circuit. He come in contact with the PC case. You have to bolt it to the PC case, you genius. Hey, what is going on? This is hilarious. Oh, it's like hiring a kindergartner to build a PC.
So just take it in, slide it in nice and easy until you have a snug fit, and then...
And why is the power supply fan on the other side? What's going on with this guy? Why is he trying to keep his motherboard cool? Blowing some air on it or something? Or keep it warm? Like, what is he doing? Very interesting here. This was backwards world build. Okay, backwards land.
Lift it to the back and make sure it's right up against the frame. Now you just take the required screws and you tighten.
Didn't he just say it was short circuit if it comes into contact? Like, why is he having it contact his case then? That's funny.
And screw in.
And he's still using this stupid Swiss Army knife. What a freaking genius. Get a Phillips head screwdriver, you weirdo.
So next step, we're going to install the CPU cooler. In this case, it's going to go on the top end of the case, and we're just going to have the hose hang out for a little while until we install the processor, which is going to come a little later. Always be...
I can see right through this radiator right now. This clown took all the fans off his radiator. I don't know why he did it, but he took all the fans off the radiator. Like a true genius. And he's probably going to install it without fans.
Be sure to try to place it in the system first before you install.
Yep, just like I suspected, he's going to install it with no fans attached.
Install it, because you can see it takes up a lot of space. But in this case, no pun intended, it fits in perfectly, and we're going to start screwing it in.
And I can see that, I don't know if you guys saw that, but this guy picked up the long bolts that go through the fans on the opposite side of this radiator here. So this genius is going to try to ram these long bolts into this radiator from the top end here, like a true genius, like a true rocket scientist. He's going to ram these long bolts in here.
There's nothing special about this screwing in process. They're just really...
You can see right here. Look at these bolts. There are these bolts that go right through the fan. Because of the width and the dimensions of the fan, you need long bolts. So on the opposite side, the bolts that go through your fan have to be long. That's how you get them to connect to the radiator. But this clown is trying to use them to connect to the case, which you use the smaller screws to connect to here. The smaller ones. You don't use these long ones. But Mr. Super Genius here wants to break the radiator. $2,000.
Long screws because they go through the entire frame of the cooler, and they take forever. So next up, cables. Every power supply is going to come with a big bag of Velcro cables.
No sir, Mr. Genius. Not every power supply is going to come with a Velcro bag of cables. It depends on your price point. If you get a cheaper one, you're not going to get all that stuff. Usually it comes in a more expensive power supply or brand. They usually have that stuff. If it's a cheaper brand, you won't get any of that stuff in there. You just get a few cables that you're supposed to get. They'll give you a certain amount of cables, but usually you won't get a cable holder bag. You won't get Velcro straps. You won't get none of that. So Mr. Genius is wrong again.
It's kind of daunting at first, so you always have to find the ones that are going to fit. In this case, you need to match those cables.
And he didn't even put his cables on the power supply. He just put the power supply in with no cables attached to it. Just putting in a power supply for no reason. There's not a single cable installed on this power supply. This is weird.
With the correct descriptions on the power supply. Next step is we're connecting the power supply to the motherboard with the motherboard and attaching the 24 pin for any specific ports of the CPU cooler brain, depending on how you port out. We'll just toss that out.
You can't toss that plastic piece out just like that in the trash, because if your motherboard is damaged, which this guy is likely going to do to a motherboard he's working on, you're gonna need that to have a reman of your motherboard when you send it back. Because if you send it back without that, they will send it back to you and say, no, stupid, we're not taking this motherboard. Because that plastic bracket, you have to have it that it protects the pins, because on Intel their pins are placed inside where your CPU goes. Their pins are on the motherboard. It's not like AMD. AMD's pins are on their CPU, but Intel pins are on the motherboard, and you use that little plastic bracket to safely guard against damage on that. That's why you have that. You don't just toss it in the trash.
Out of here. And now we have an exposed CPU holder or board, and we're going to use the CPU applicator. This
CPU applicator. I've never used one, and I build dozens and dozens of computers, so I guess only rocket scientists use this.
This is a special little part that not every...
What the heck? This guy is freaking using his thermal paste spreader, and he's poking the freaking CPU underneath. Like, why would you break your CPU without even using it yet? He's trying to actually break it right now, putting pressure on those very, very, important components. Like, what is wrong with this guy? Man, he wants everybody to destroy their stuff they paid all their good money for.
Everyone may get, but this motherboard that...
He was actually putting pressure on that. I could see him, like, his hand shaking. He was putting pressure on it. He was trying to break something.
We got from ASUS definitely does have. It's called a CPU installation tool. It makes a 7 hexacore C supports overclocking and apply right, and this will maybe lean it down into the system. So we're about to apply thermal paste to the CPU.
This genius is gonna apply thermal paste again when the AIO already has thermal paste pre-installed. This genius is gonna put on more thermal paste on it. You don't mix thermal paste like that, because you have no idea what compounds are in all that thermal paste. You don't know, if something might happen when you mix those thermal paste together and it damages, the CPU, because it might be corrosive or something. You don't know, like, the mixture combining two different thermal pastes might be something bad that you don't want. So I don't know how we got that idea.
Every CPU cooler actually comes with a bit of thermal paste already neatly applied in a circle around it, but it's usually not enough. It's good, essentially, PC building.
This good PC building this. Wow, this clown is gonna actually tell people that it's good PC building to apply more thermal paste. Wow, this guy's a rogue. He's gonna destroy people's junk for the fun of it.
Practice to have a little bit extra and layer it on top of the CPU. The final portion is to add the CPU cooler to the top end of the processor. So you're...
Look at the lake. I think this guy emptied the entire tube. The entire tube on this CPU. You don't want to do that, because if you put a whole freaking entire tube on here, you're gonna have it run down. It could run down into this CPU and hit the pins underneath here and fry your motherboard, fry your whole system. There's just too much thermal paste, It could go everywhere and ruin your components. You don't want that.
I see that there are 4 brackets, or rather like screws in here with bracket enough to actually physically come in contact with it, like this. So the back panel, where the post screen. So what's next? Well, there's installation media on it. Essential driver is 1080p HD. It's a game to run.
And he's running some crappy games on his supposedly $2,000 PC gaming rig. Like, really? First, I guess this is his flight simulator game.
And it's still doing a pretty good job. So right against the bot, and I'm distracted.
League of Legends is his next super game he's playing on his $2,000 rig. Super genius. Wow. Just wow. Alright, that's it, guys. Like, oh my goodness gracious. Like, some people were telling me I had to watch this, and I watched this, and I'm like, I'm so angry. Like, I'm saying stuff all crazy now. Like, I can't believe this guy is actually having people build computers like that. It just amazes me. The Verge, full of super geniuses. Wow. Wow. Alright guys, thanks for watching the video. I hope you don't use that Verge guide to build your computer. Well, they took down their version, so, but I know it's still online, because once you put up a video, it's there forever. But I hope no one uses it to build their freaking PC. Okay, and as always guys, I'm thanking you for watching my video. Bye bye.